Today we're continuing with our fractions unit and we're talking about adding and subtracting fractions today. So when we talk about adding and subtracting fractions, we have some steps that we're going to follow. First thing that we're going to do is we are going to stack up the fractions. So with multiply and divide, we went side to side. So multiply, divide, side to side. Add, subtract, we stack and rack. So we're going to stack and rack, adding and subtracting. So multiply, divide, side to side, add, subtract, stack, and rack. We're going to convert mixed numbers into improper fractions, just like we've been doing for this unit. We're going to look at the fractions. Do they have the same denominator? If they do not, we need to find a common denominator, which is a common factor. After we find a common denominator, we're going to add the numerators together, but keep the denominator the same because we found that common denominator. We did all that work, so keep the denominator the same. And then we're going to leave the answer improper and simplify our answer. So if we look at the first one, we have an adding problem. So add, subtract, stack, and rack. We're going to stack them up. So we have 2/3 plus 3/4. Now, the next step, it says, look at the fractions. Do they have the same denominator? Well, the denominator for this one is a 3, and the denominator for this one is a 4. We need to find a common denominator, a common factor between them. We could even just multiply them together because 3 times 4 would be 12, and a common denominator would be 12. So make them both a denominator of 12. 3 times 4 is 12. So I'm going to do the same thing on the numerator because what I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator as well. 2 times 4 is 8. 4 times 3 is 12. What I do to the bottom, I must also do to the top. 3 times 3 is 9. Then it says, look at the fractions. Do they have the same denominators? We did that. Find the common denominator. We did that. Add to the numerators, keep the denominator. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to draw a little bracket between the numerators. And we're going to write 8 plus 9 over 12, so we don't forget. 8 plus 9 is 17 over, keep the denominator the same, which is 12. Do 17 and 12 have any factors in common? They're not even. They don't end in both 5 or 0. They don't both end in zeros. They aren't doubles. Evil 3 doesn't work, and the numerator won't divide the denominator. So this here is my answer. Now, if you look at the answer choices, I don't have any that match because I have whole numbers in them. If you wanted to, you could do the division and find what whole number is in here. How many times does 12 go into 17? It would be 1 time because 12 times 1 is 12. 12 plus 5 gets me to 17. Denominator stays 12. So you could do that if you wanted to. Or another option you have is you could do the magic C to any of the mixed numbers. So 9 times 3 is 27, plus 2 more gets me to 29 over 9, which doesn't match. 12 times 1 is 12, plus 5 gives me 17 over 12. That's the matching answer, so we're going to circle that one. This one here, 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 more gives me 5 over 2. So that one doesn't match. So the only one that matches is this middle one in the middle. All right, let's look at the next example. This one is a subtracting one. So remember, add, subtract, stack, and rack. So we have 1 1/2 minus 5/6. Then we need to do the magic C to turn things improper. So 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1 gives me 3 over 2. And this 5/6 is just going to stay, 5/6. Then I need to look, do they have a common denominator? They do not at the moment. So, if we look at this, is 2 a factor of 6? It is. We can multiply 2 times 3 to get to 6, so we can just leave this 5/6 alone and set this equal to a denominator of 6. 2 times 3 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. And this 5/6 is just going to get drug along because we don't need to change anything with it. Now we have to add the numerators. 9 plus 5 over 6. 9 plus 5 gives me, I'm sorry, not plus 5, it's subtraction. 9 minus 5 gives me 4 over 6, and I can simplify that by 2, numerator and denominator, and I'm left with 2/3. So my answer choice here would be that one. There's no mixed numbers to turn into improper fractions. Okay. I want you to try number 1 on your own. So try number 1 on your own, remembering it's subtraction. When you're ready, unpause the video and we'll talk about it. So if we look at number 1, it's a subtraction problem. Add, subtract, stack, and rack. So we're going to stack them and rack them up. So 5 3/4 minus 2 1/2. These are mixed numbers, so we need to make them improper. 4 times 5 is 20, plus 3 gives me 23 over 4. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 gives me 5 over 2. Look at the denominators, 4 and 2. Well, 2 is a factor of 4, so I can just set this one equal to a denominator of 4 and leave this one alone. 2 times 2 is 4, 5 times 2 is 10, and I don't have to do anything to this guy, so I'm not even going to do anything to him. Then I have to add the numerators together. So I have 23, subtract them. 23 minus 10 over 4. 23 minus 10 is going to be 13 over 4, and I cannot do any simplifying. They're not both even. They don't end in 5 or 0. They don't end in zeros. They aren't doubles. Evil 3 will not work, and the numerator doesn't work. So more than likely it's done. Now, I could turn it into a mixed number. 4 goes into 13 3 times. 4 times 3 would be 12, plus 1 more gives me 13. So that would be this answer here. But if you didn't want to do this, and you wanted to leave it as 13 over 4, like we've showed you just to leave it improper, turn your answer choices improper. This one here becomes 9 over 4. This one here becomes 13 over 4, which matches our answer, so that's why this one here is the answer. This one becomes 8 over 2, and then this one becomes 33 over 4. So if you don't like to turn back into mixed numbers, just turn all your answer choices improper. Okay, I want you to do number 2 on your own. So if we do number 2, add, subtract, stack, and rack, so it becomes 5/12 plus 5/6. Look at the denominators. They do not have the same denominator. They have a 12 and a 6. But 6 is a factor of 12, so I can make it have a denominator of 12 and just leave 5/12 alone. 6 times 2 is 12, so 5 times 2 will be 10. Now I have to do the numerators. I'm adding, so I have 5 plus 10 over 12. Well, 5 plus 10 is 15 over 12 because the denominator stays. I can divide that by 3, and I'm left with 5 over 4. Now, if you see the mixed number in there, that's great. 4 goes into 5 one time. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 more gives me 5. But if you don't want to do this, because that would match this answer here, turn your answer choices into improper fractions. 3 times 1 plus 1 gives you 4 over 3. And this one was 5 over 4, which is why this one is the answer. Okay, I want you to try number 3 and number 4 on your own, but before you do number 4, we need to fix it. It should be 3 1/3 minus 1 5/6. So go ahead, solve number 3 and number 4. So if we look at number 3, add, subtract, stack, and rack. So I'm going to stack them up. So I have 7 and 1/5 plus 6 and 2/5. Turn them into improper fractions. 5 times 7 is 35, plus 1 more gives me 36 over 5. This one becomes 32 over 5. If we look at the denominators, they are the same. They both have a denominator of 5, so I don't need to do any changing. This is an addition problem, so I'm going to add 36 plus 32 over 5. 36 plus 32 equals 68 over 5. I cannot do any more simplifying. They're not even. They both don't end in 5 or 0. They both don't end in zeros. They're not doubles. Evil 3 doesn't work, and the numerator won't work. So I'm left with 68 over 5. Now you could turn it into a mixed number if you wanted to, or turn these into improper fractions to find the one that is the answer. Now if we look at these answer choices, the denominator is 5. So I can rule out this one here because the denominator is 10, and this one here because the denominator is 3. But just to be safe, you could turn them into improper fractions. 10 times 13 is 130, plus 3 is 133 over 10. That's not the answer. Same thing with this one here. 3 times 14 is going to be 42, plus 2 more gives you 44 over 3, which is not the answer. So I'm left with 2 now. Well, if I turn this one improper, 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 gives me 6 over 5, not the answer. And this one here, if I turn it improper, will be 68 over 5. So here is our answer. If we look at number 4, add, subtract, stack, and rack, so I have 3 and 1/3 minus 1 and 5/6. Do the magic C, turn them improper. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 gives me 10 over 3. This one, 6 times 1 is 6, plus 5 gives me 11 over 6. Then I need to find a common denominator, because right now the denominators are 3 and 6. So 3 is actually a factor of 6, so I'm only going to change this one to make it a denominator of 6. 3 times 2 is 6. 10 times 2 is 20. Then I'm going to look at the numerators. I'm going to do 20 minus 11, because it's subtraction, over 6. 20 minus 11 is 9 over 6. This 2 doesn't work. They don't end in 5 or 0. They're not doubles. They don't end in 0, but 3 will work. So if I do 9 divided by 3, I get 3, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. So I get 3 over 2. And if I look at these, if I look at the denominators of these, really this one's the only one that has a denominator of 2. But if I want to double check myself, I'm going to turn them all improper. So this one becomes 7 over 3. This one becomes 4 over 3. This one is 3 over 2, over 2, 2, 2. And so here, this one for sure is our answer.